Because I can't tell you how many times I could have pulled it out and Googled, hey, GE, model numbers, such washer, get an AC error code, what's going on? And you'll have 15 to 100 YouTube videos that'll pop up that'll walk you through that process.
I've heard this statement over and over again. The HVAC technicians, maintenance technicians, plumbers, electricians are the millionaires of the future. And some of them will argue, no, this is of the present.
Nobody wants to hear those conversations, and nobody shares those conversations, because all too often as senior leadership, we find excuses for the problems as opposed to listen to the people that are living it day to day.
And when you super scale a model that has so many deficiencies, what you do, you're amplifying the issues that you're having to begin with, because you're not addressing those first.
Make your personality, your skill set, your work ethic, and your attitude the number one attribute that you can pass on to any property you go to. You don't need a college degree to be very successful, right? And trades are one of them. Trades, and I say, if you're wanting to trade, don't go into trade with the idea or the mindset that I'm going to work in this industry for the next 10 years. Go into the mindset with, I'm going to learn this industry so I can be.
Super excited to have you on.
Right.
Welcome.
Appreciate
The show. Let's start with what's hot in property management right now in multifamily. I know you're involved with a lot of stuff with trading, with employee development, and everything. What are the hot trends that you see in the multifamily maintenance currently?
So in the maintenance side, the hot things, the hot topic buttons that we've been discussing are obviously the refrigerant changes this coming year. We've put a huge emphasis on the training, getting them up to par with the changes in it, especially from the maintenance side with the additional safety switches and then obviously the refrigerant change, just missing the concern of the highly flammable, refrigerants that are coming. And then the second thing, and I guess this is probably like an age-old challenge for the industry, but it seems like the last 10 to 15 years, it's got much worse. Finding the qualified people, and then the right people, and then the constant staff turnover. I think a lot of that, might be more specific to certain companies, but I also think as an industry, we've done a poor job of preparing that next crop of technicians that are coming up through. There's been, a big push over the last couple of years about trade schools and trade training and all that, which is helping, but that's going to be 5 to 10 years out. I've tried to instill in my supervisors, look for attitude and work ethic more than the skill set. We can teach them the skill set, especially for entry-level techs. You can't teach attitude and work ethic.
Let's break them down. Let's unpack here. So let's start with the refrigerant transition.
Yes,
so what are the main challenges that you see here?
In my opinion, the biggest things that we're going to see is, especially at system changeouts, your line sets, the need to change line sets as well, because you don't have the adequate size line set for the new refrigerants. So that's a challenge for some properties. Some of our properties are old enough where they had 1/4-inch line sets, 2-story buildings with, where they were able to set the units much closer together. So, those all have to be changed. So line sets, identifying that, knowing that. And then the other thing is all the additional safety devices that come with the new systems. Sensors that do leak detection. The day of blowing and going or topping a unit off that's leaking for 3-4 months, those days are behind you now. Because with the new sensors, you get a certain amount of leak, it's going to be right back there and it's going to be shutting itself down, right? As opposed to, we'll buy that on Friday and we'll top it off and we'll get by until Monday, right? That's not going to work either. So we're going to need to get more diligent about taking care of those issues in a more timely manner and addressing those. And then, of course, that brings in additional troubleshooting for low voltage controls and stuff of that nature, which in my opinion is probably the thing that these guys are least skilled at, especially the entry-level guys. I've found a lot where, most of what they know is because of what they learned from somebody else on the problem. Probably that, hey, if X and Y happens, the resolution is Z, right? And they become part replacers based upon that knowledge, as opposed to really knowing how to check the microfarads on a capacitor, or, ohming out a compressor properly to properly diagnose it, etc.
So on a learning curve, how long do you think it could take a good technician that has a solid, technical base to absorb this change and, get familiar with, with a new refrigerant, also with the sensors that, we didn't have in the past. Also, I could foresee them learning how to bypass the sensors just to keep something going, right? Just to keep something working. I could totally see that as becoming a thing.
Well, so, and it's funny because we did a trip to Dayton, out in Houston, and they took us through the whole plant, and basically to talk about, the new refrigerants rolling out on West Street. Problem is, bypassing the sensors, they're also ohm. So if you get a drop in resistance because it's been bypassed, the system is going to stay shut down. So it's not like you're going to be able to go bypass the sensor like you would a flow switch or a fire stat the way before, because even though you've closed that circuit, it's not going to read the resistance on it.
Yeah,
so it's going to still stay shut down.
It changes the resistance. That's the part that honestly I didn't know.
Yep.
It's fascinating, but yeah, that's going to make it.
But to answer your question, again, I think that goes back to, work ethic in the person. The right person, the right individual that wants to learn it, they'll pick it up pretty quickly. We've done one training road show where we went on site, very hands-on training, and we went through it. And we had techs that haven't even done with us 6 months. That were tech once, which is very entry level, basically a punch person. But they picked it up pretty quickly. And we've done very little to refresh it with them. They've taken it upon. We always provide them plenty of training material afterwards that they can review and resource back to. But for the most part, if they came in with the right mindset and they want to learn it, they can learn it pretty quickly.
Let's unpack the second thing you mentioned, and it's the labor shortages, right? Which I agree with you. I'm seeing them getting worse and worse.
Yes.
Versus us doing better as an industry. What are some things that helped you recently to kind of alleviate that situation?
Okay. So what we've really implemented, and I've pushed it, and it's probably my number one, it is my favorite part of the job. We do what we call road shows. Every quarter, we travel to all the markets, all the technicians come in the morning, all the supervisors come in the afternoon, and we do hands-on training. Now, this is great for your people that are already there, but that's not going to bring in more. As well as I do, over the last 10 to 15 years, things have been so good in our industry, to be quite honest. Ownership didn't want guys going off site. They didn't want to be having them waste time training and going to certification courses. I mean, I used to have the apartment associate's office call and say, hey, we got classes coming up, we might have to cancel if we don't get enough people, right? And I was like, I just can't send anybody, I don't have approvals, I can't get anybody out. And things were going so well, they didn't really worry about it. The other thing that was a big setback was obviously COVID. COVID, nobody was doing nothing, right? No training was going on basically for almost 2 years. Sites were so short-staffed as it was, they couldn't afford to do anything, time-wise or financially, really, And then also it started a trend that I'm still battling today, which is call the contractor, right? Well, you can't get the part, call contractor. Parts are 10 days out, call contractor, right? And then because of the COVID restrictions and not wanting to be in apartments and all, and operating in special hours and minimizing contact, the guys weren't going with the contractors. They weren't getting that advantage of being able to observe and learn from that process, right? But our road shows, I think, have done it's been a very gratifying thing for the company as far as our on-site staff. I do know, and I've encouraged it heavily, Valencia State College in Orlando, they've started a hospitality division, which they always had for management side, but now they do a maintenance certification program. And it's nuts and bolts. It's A to Z. So I've really encouraged that in the industry, get guys into those classes, whether we put them there or whether they just go and pick up a couple of classes here and there, so they can finish up that certification program. I'm seeing a lot more technical schools doing that. What we did over the last 5 years to kind of make up for the shortages, we started looking more towards the trade specific, getting an HVAC guy, bringing him in and teaching the plumbing, the appliances, etc. Or you got a good guy that's really sound in plumbing, bringing him in and having him help train everybody else with the plumbing or the electrical, but definitely started looking more towards the trades because there just weren't enough maintenance guys out there that were skilled.
Very interesting take here. And how do you find those skilled trade folks? Where do you go to recruit them from?
Yeah, so I've literally recruited guys away from our service providers. Just open conversations, not going up and saying, hey, would you ever be interested? But, open conversations. And if they showed an interest, start having the conversation. We do have some advantages. For example, in the trades, when they're on call, they're on call, right? And it's, a week long, 2 weeks long sometimes, right? Or a lot of the trades, if you're not billing a customer, you're not making any money, right? So some days you have to be in the truck for 10, 11 hours. I used to do it. I was an HVAC technician for years. And then I also was a journeyman plumber for years. Some days I'd have to put 10, 11 hours in a truck, to get 8 billable hours to make, the money. Now, granted, the hourly rate was great, but, the other thing, a lot of the little companies don't offer the benefits the apartment industry does. So, just having those conversations, and then after having those conversations, some of these guys, hey, how would you ever get into the business? Now you open your door, there's an opportunity to have a conversation.
Next thing that came up in the conversation is training and how people learn. You mentioned the in-person opportunities. The reality is that they're limited.
Very.
And they're not scalable. In other words, it's if you're a trainer, right? Mm-hmm. You could only be in one place at one time.
Right.
So how do you touch 1,000 people versus 10 or 20 people that are showing up to the class? So that brings up the next way of training, right? And let's just say, we have the online training and we also have training using technology. What are your thoughts on online training? What's available out there? What actually really works?
So we've done a couple of those webinars. My experience with webinars is the webinars themselves are great. My only issue that I've come across, and it comes back to that attitude and work ethic thing, right? You do a webinar, you send the information out to the sites they're supposed to be on it. Next thing you know, a computer's sitting there with a screen open, but there's 15 million distractions that are happening during the course of it, and all of a sudden they're not there. Or they're not really paying attention. It's a goof off session for them all, right? But yeah, the webinars have been good. We actually do a monthly Teams training as well, where they all get on, and every month I'll pick 1 or 2 topics that are limited to 1 hour, right? Everybody gets on for an hour. Well, we get through it, open up to questions at the end, and that's it. That training is what I use for, like onboarding new people with Teams, how to use Teams, how to use NetVendor or our mobile facilities apps, and then also compliance kinds of things. You'd be surprised, fire, life safety stuff. You'd be surprised how many the supervisors nowadays could not even begin to tell you when an expiration is on a fire extinguisher, or how do they even find out, right? And then, in the same thing, most of them, think about it, COVID was almost 10 years ago now, right? They waived all of the inspections during COVID. They weren't doing them. I'm seeing more and more supervisors with 5 years or less experience. So a lot of them have only done fire alarm safety inspections, maybe once or twice. If their property happens to fall within a period that they didn't have a 5-year fire riser room inspection due, or they didn't have a 10-year dry head check or a 20-year wet head check, that's going to be all new to them, right? So those are the kinds of trainings we do on Teams, where we can share this stuff with them, show them examples of, flip your fire extinguishers upside down. The manufacturer date's going to be stamped on it. So then when your 6 years are due and your 12 years. Check your gauges in your riser. They're going to have a manufacturer date on the face of the gauge. They all get changed. You do a 5-year, they're changing them, right? How to identify dry heads versus wet heads. So especially this far south, a lot of the properties don't have dry heads down here. We don't worry about freezes, so they don't do them, right? Again, you got a guy that moved from here up to Gainesville or Jacksonville for you. They may not know what a dry head is. So those are the kinds of trainings that we do there, more knowledge-based as opposed to the hands-on. We really do leave the hands-on to the Q4, the quarterly ratios. And you asked the question, they're difficult to scale, and they are. Depending on your portfolio, you got to do it market-wise, right? So, for example, where I covered 3 states, I'd go to Savannah and I would plan a day, and in the morning do the road show with the technicians, and then the road show in the afternoon with all the supervisors from the whole region. So it's 6 or 7 properties. And the same thing Orlando, Fort Myers. So it is scalable to some extent. And then also, if it's a road show that's going to be like really hands-on, like our HVAC road show this year, like I said, was geared towards the new refrigerants to roll out. So I really wanted to do a lot of brazing with the guys. I wanted them to know how important it is to make certain you're putting that low flow of nitrogen through that while you're brazing, right? And what the benefits are, not just from old school oxidizing, minimizing the oxidizing and all that, but from the new standpoint is if you're putting a low flow of nitrogen through that, like most likely you've purged out any of that refrigerant that's mildly flammable, right? So for safety purposes. So we did really hands-on. We set up a test. They had to do a circuit, certain number of fittings, certain number of pipe, and then we pressure tested it the whole 9 yards. And when you can get it hands-on like that, then you need more people, right? Because you got 20, 25 guys. It's hard to be watching everybody while they're doing it, right? So that's when we just bring our resident support supervisors in. All 3 of us will do the class, right? And break it down into smaller groups. So it is scalable, but I do understand you're not going to be able to take, 1 or 2 days and knock out 1,000 people, right? It's just not going to happen.
This episode is brought to you by Appwork, the maintenance platform built by operators for operators. If your work order system is slowing you down, it's time for a change. Appwork helps you streamline operations, boost tech efficiency, and track everything in real time. Smarter tools, better results. Check them out at appworkco.com. Let's take it to the next level after that. Let's just say that I'm a technician, right? I'm in the field. Even one of the technicians that, was part of your classes, one of your classes, I have a situation that either wasn't taught in the class or maybe I missed that class. And how do I solve this on the spot, right? I don't necessarily have you to pick up the phone and walk me through, or a supervisor, or maybe I am the supervisor, right? So I don't have anyone on site to say, hey, Adrian, this is how you to walk me through. So another method that I think could be very, very efficient is having it on your phone, right?
Sure.
In some form of fashion. How would you envision that part that you take with you in your pocket? What would be the ideal situation?
So I can't tell you how many times. So what we did in my portfolios, myself, my 2 support guys, Eddie and Jason, we were available 24/7, right? Phones never got turned off. So yes, lots of times they would reach out to us and we could verbally walk them through. But I tell the guys that I preach this all the time. They grow up in an age that is so advantageous to them. They don't really realize it because it's so normal to them, right? I mean, I wish I would have had an iPhone when I was coming up through the ranks, because I can't tell you how many times I could have pulled it out and Googled, hey, GE model number, such, washer, getting an AC error code, what's going on? And you'll have 15 to 100 YouTube videos that'll pop up that'll walk you through that process. So that's one thing I tell them always. First, go to your phone, YouTube it. If there's not a video on there, then I'd be surprised, especially in today's day and age. I have not found one yet, to be honest. And I don't care whether it's appliances, pools, air conditioning, doesn't matter. There's somebody out there providing those. So that's an invaluable resource. There's also websites that are specific to trades. Blue On, which is a new application that's being used by Ferguson, and I think Lowe's is indoctrinated. It's Lowe's Pro anyway. You can go on there and you can search different tasks as well. But yeah, I encourage them to look for those kinds of resources all the time.
Now with the advent of AI, I'm seeing like taking it up a notch, up a step further to where you could literally pull up your phone. Let's just say that it's an electrical wiring problem. I don't know how to do the diagram. I'm looking at some wires and wondering what could be wrong, like where could be the defect. If I was to just kind of take a picture of that wiring diagram and also the wires that actually are and upload the two pictures in ChatGPT, I have a decent chance of like getting an answer, like a good guidance, right?
Yep.
And this is, we're talking about large learning models like ChatGPT. A step further beyond that is creating agents, which are literally like, for lack of better words, I would call them like e-avatars, or training bodies, I used to call them, right? And you could upload the information that each person, each individual has knowledge of and the one that they should have knowledge of. So you literally build that agent to specifically cater to the needs of that particular individual. In other words, if the individual runs into an issue that they're not great at or they never done, they could literally pull that application, that app, and then talk to the agent. So it's conversational. And the way I see this, being superior, it's obviously it's like very specialized to who you are. It learns you. And secondly, it could provide the answer in seconds versus, let's just say, a YouTube video, which is, 10 to 5 to 10 minutes or 3 minutes video. This will give it to you like in seconds, and it's conversational. It's like you and I are talking right now. We're looking at the thing, I don't know where to go from here, and I ask you questions and you answer. So that could be done now with technology, which is quite remarkable.
Absolutely. And I definitely see more and more of that, we just really started bridging the gap that we've had with the company for a while with AI, starting to learn complexity and all those kinds of things. And I definitely see a trend that's taken us that way for sure in our industry. Matter of fact, I was looking to finish my project management certification and sit for the state exam. And so I was online looking for it, and I found one that's specific. It also has 4 introductory courses to AI. So it's AI with project management, right? So I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this one because this is the future, right? And just a little bit of introduction already, I can see so many applications to our industry that's going to be hugely rewarded with the properties and ownership groups and management companies that get involved with the AI trend.
Where do you see AI taking us as a society and us as an industry? How do you envision the future?
So as far as the society goes, I don't think there's a limit to it, to be honest. And to be honest, that's a little scary. And I think it's scary for most people, right? Because the question immediately becomes, how's it going to replace me, right? And yeah, that's going to happen. But I think it's also going to open up a whole bunch of avenues that can be filled with just a little bit of retraining, right? What I found, and I'm not, I'd like to say I'm slightly above average computer literate, and I'm not finding the operation of either the Chat GPT or Perplexity, and there's 2 other ones we use. The name escapes me at the moment, but I'm not seeing them to be any more difficult than learning Microsoft Excel or Word, right? So I think everybody out there could definitely move in that direction with very little effort if they wanted to. Matter of fact, there's some certification courses you could take just for AI that they say it's 9 to 12 weeks, So as far as our industry specifically, I think what you're going to see is exactly what you were talking about, and you were kind of introducing a little bit, is the integration of AI into the training aspect of the business. There's so many, it's a limitless list of opportunity in training, right? You could set up a training center with diagnostic boards, whether it's air conditioning, and you could just through AI go through a group setting training, I saw it on a demonstration once where you put on the things like you game with, right? And you could pick 10 or 15 different training modules, and it's like you're right there in front of the AC working on it, right? From brazing to testing, the whole gamut. I mean, all that stuff is available, and now it becomes available to the masses, right? Just bounce that around from place to place, and they can do it, or even to do it as a teams kind of thing. I'm sure there's some kind of way that if it hasn't been done already, will be able to be done where whoever's wearing it could show up on a screen, everybody can see it, and everybody can work together. It's going to be a huge mover if applied and used the right way in our industry as far as training the next crop and preparing people to be in our field.
I think the fear that you mentioned of, losing jobs, individuals losing their jobs over AI, it's founded.
Sure.
As jobs are disappearing as we speak because of AI, but at the same time, I believe that learning and embracing AI, because at the end of the day, AI is just a tool. There's nothing else, right? So a tool by itself it's not gonna be doing all the work. There has to be a human behind it to guide it, to properly guide it, to prompts, to whatever. So a huge opportunity is to learn how to be the person that handles that tool. And I think that's what makes you, each individual, extremely valuable, or more and more valuable versus the present time, and I guess provides a certain level of job security.
Yep.
On the other hand, automation, right? So there's actual robots right now out there working, replacing humans at scale. Let's just take two examples. I've seen videos of robots that are installing roofing, right? And although they might not be working perfectly today, but these things are improving at a rate that we've never seen in the past. Because if you have a team of robots, they're doing certain things, all that information is being captured. And AI acts as a fabric across all the robots,
right,
and also learns as it goes, right? So it sees, where do we miss the mark? Where did we miss the mark? And then that could be fixed. So you learn so fast, way faster than I think, our minds even can comprehend.
Absolutely.
I think AI is just something that works at the speed that we understand this fast. We have a pretty good feeling that, it makes that incredible change. But I don't think we have an idea about how fast that things moves. Our mind, it's limited to understanding.
I've seen it already reaching out to our industry on site. A perfect example. Last year, I convinced one of the owners to let us buy these meat bots. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's a robotic cool cleaner. I mean, it's got a caddy. You take it out of this caddy, you set it at the edge of the pool. Don't matter where. Just set it at the edge of the pool, and you pick what function you want it to do, and it goes and it does it.
Like a Roomba for pools.
And when it's done, it returns itself to the same exact spot. And it's not just a vacuum anymore. It vacuums the pool, it scrubs the walls, it skims the top of the pool, and it's reading your TDS and adding clarifier as needed to keep it crystal clear, right? That's an hour and a half every day that you normally do the pool that you've now saved in man hours, right? And I see more and more of that type of thing creeping in the next 10 to 15 years in our industry. I think we're a long way from removing maintenance staff and having somebody perform the day-to-day. But there's definitely some avenues that we could string to, and we will, that might minimize the amount of man hours that will be needed on the site.
A few of the executives that I've interviewed recently, we're talking about the future of trades, right? And I've heard this statement over and over again. The HVAC technicians, maintenance technicians, plumbers, electricians are the millionaires of the future. And some of them will argue, no, this is of the present. It's not even in the future. What do you think of that?
I agree. I'm going to use my son as an example. My son because of his baseball skill. He got a scholarship to go to University of Missouri to play baseball.
Congratulations.
Second year there, he tore his labrum for the second time. He had torn it his senior year of high school, and then he had tore it in the middle of fall ball, and that was that. He was very mature and realistic. He says, Dad, nobody's coming looking for a 20-year-old that's tore their labrum twice to play at the next level. And the only reason I came to Missouri was to play baseball. So he decided to come home. I was kind of against it at first because I knew if he came home, he'd get in with a group of guys that were just doing JUCO part-time, if they were doing any of that, and would not go back to school and finish. And that's exactly what happened. But he went to work in the trades for a company called More Sports, doing tennis court refinishing. First, he started out just doing fence installs and the grunt work with them, right? Within a year or two, he was refinishing courts and all. And then he was named Florida's #1 court refinisher and doing all the resurfacing of the courts down at the United States Tennis Center. The kid's making $100,000 a year and company truck and this, that, and the other thing. No college degree, walked out of school with $2,000 in student debt after 2 years. Long paid that off long ago. And he's making more than most of his friends that went to school and got 4 and 5 year degrees.
That's such an amazing story, and thank you for sharing. Because I think we're too focused on high-end jobs, high-level jobs, and we're tending to forget that we still need someone, to fix whatever breaks.
And I'll tell you, I'm not taking any of the credit because I was the parent that always said, "Oh, you're either going to college or you're going to the military. You're doing one or the other. You got to do something." And which is so silly because I've been in this trade for 33 years, right? And I told people that come into the industry or are thinking about coming to the industry, this is one of those industries you can come into and you can go a long way without a college degree. And you can make a very good living without a college degree. And you can have a long career without a college degree. As long as you're willing to put the work ethic in, you have the right attitude, and you're trainable and coachable, right? Because knowledge is power. Okay, let's be real.
100%.
Okay, knowledge is power. So you don't need a piece of paper to prove that. And I think there's people recently, Charlie Kirk, others that have proven you don't need a college degree to be very successful, right? And trades are one of them. Trades, and I say, if you're going into trade, don't go into trade with the idea or the mindset that I'm going to work in this industry for the next 10 years. Go into the mindset with, I'm going to learn this industry so I can be a business owner in this industry within 10 years, right? And yes, that's where the millionaires come from.
That's amazing. And you're absolutely right. Now, being born and grown up in Europe and going back there to visit often, what I'm noticing is that a very different approach between there and here. You said you could be doing amazing things and you don't need a degree. Well, they focus so much in Europe on diplomas, pieces of paper, certificates. I even interview people from my team that are from that part of the world. And then when I asked, for example, what's your level of English? They say, well, I am level C2. They're giving me some, letters and numbers. And I said, honestly, I'm not familiar with this ranking system. And also, honestly, don't take it the wrong way, but I don't care for it. How about we have a conversation?
Right.
And then I could tell you, I could gauge that on the spot. Right? Why should we need it? But it's a society that's very focused. And then the first thing when you do a job interview is to talk about your certifications. And that's kind of like a huge pre-qualifier. While here, I'm seeing individuals that started as leasing agents. They didn't even, maybe get their CAP designation. And they're running multi-billion-dollar companies.
Yep.
And to me, that's the way to go. The incredible opportunity and upward mobility that we have in American society, it's very hard to duplicate. You're gonna have to work really hard, search in other societies to find this level of upward mobility that we have in the United States. Right. And I think it's actually, in so many ways, is unique.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I wish more young professionals got the opportunity to go abroad so that they would understand so that they would really truly understand, what it is about our country that in the opportunities financially and business wise in our country. Because a lot, unfortunately, a lot of what we know about European cities and about, cultures, think about, where do you hear from this? You hear about from Hollywood elitists, politicians that are traveling. Now you're getting a few more, YouTubers and social network people. But even those folks are making a lot of money, and they're going to those places to promote their pages. They're going to the best of the best places. They're visiting the best of the best places. And you're still not experiencing the lifestyle of living there. I use the example of when my parents decided they wanted to come to Florida. My dad put it in through the transfer with IBM. We had been down here and visited 7 or 8 times in a row, 8 years in a row. And they were all about moving down here. And so we got here. And within the first 6 months, my mom wanted to go back to New York. She was over Florida. She's like, this isn't what I wanted. I was like, yeah, that's because you came down here on a vacation and you made a decision to move us based upon what we did on a vacation 1 week out of the year, right? It's likewise, so you make a very valid point. The whole upward mobility within our society is a lot better than what people give it credit to be. And especially in our industry. I think our industry is probably one of the best as far as the opportunity for upward mobility without having a degree. Next, I would say manufacturing, but manufacturing is becoming so very narrow in this country. My dad started out with IBM. He was making $75 a week, I think he said, as an assembly worker. And he left 29 years later. He was 5th level management. He was high as you could go in IBM without a college degree, right? And I mean, like, he was overseeing programmers and, in charge of their type quality assurance program for all their PC line and computers, right? That's not happening in many countries, right? That just not. So, those opportunities are a little bit tougher nowadays, but they're still there. So yeah, you couldn't have said it any better.
I believe in American dream. I lived a very good part of the American dream myself. I went to places that I never thought I would. I didn't even dream. I couldn't even dream about being in those places. That was just not. It was beyond my imagination. I could not imagine. I could not picture myself being in those places. And I don't consider myself special. I don't see having something that other people don't, from as far as intelligence IQ. All I really do is to keep showing up every day and do the very best that I could, and you got in places.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, perseverance, seriousness. Be very serious about anything that you do. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, or a maintenance worker. Be the best that you can.
Absolutely.
Do the very best that you can, and the society will reward you tenfold.
I agree. Yep.
As far as bringing new blood into the industry, you mentioned a few ways in which you've been recruiting, but I think we also have a scaling issue here. Even if someone replicates your model, right? When you think about how many people we could collectively pull from other industries and bring them into multifamily versus the needs that the industry has, I think there's still a significant gap. And I'm seeing that gap widening. So how can we build programs at scale that could fill that gap or help us narrow the gap?
I think a couple of things we got to look at. Why are we where we are, right? One, like I said earlier, I think we stopped doing the training of the people that we had within our industry already. So it limited mobility for people. The other part of it is, and I think this is going to change drastically in the next couple of years, was the growth of our industry. I mean, have you traveled the I-95 corridor from, say, Daytona Beach to Jacksonville lately? It's hard to go 4 or 5 miles before there's a new apartment complex being built, right? So part of the need problem has been because of the growth, especially in certain markets, right? Hot markets. And Florida's definitely been one of them. We're seeing that slow drastically. So I think that's going to help fix some of that problem, right? But we still got, I mean, Fort Myers alone, I think we still got 8,000 new units that are coming on in Lee County over the next 6 to 8 months, right? So, it's still going to be a problem. How do you scale it? I don't know. I seriously have not come, even within our company, I still struggle with the idea of how do we get the masses where they need to be, right? My understanding is before I came on with Hawthorne, they used to send everybody to corporate office for a week for onboarding, right? We don't do that anymore. And it's because of scaling. We just got so big as a company, the expense to do that, it would be astronomical, right? So now we put that back on the regional people to do that. And then again, if you're a regional person like me, you're covering 3 states, 43 different properties. How do you get to all these sites to do that, right? So I've not been able to figure out a plan that I would consider, foolproof. I think we've done a much better job and we've tweaked things along the way. Obviously, we use a lot of teams, right, for onboarding, setting them up with their emails, getting them set up with NetVendor, our mobile facility apps, doing training on teams for those aspects. Also, our company has what we call Hawthorne University. They can go in and they can, go in and view videos that will help them, that kind of stuff.
What's your thought? What do you think about apprenticeship programs?
I think they're absolutely invaluable, and I think more property ownership groups should use them. Most of the ownership groups or management companies that are using them, they don't use them for the maintenance. All the apprentice programs are for accountants, HR people, asset managers, those kinds of roles. They need to start moving in the direction, get in touch with schools like Florida Vocational, Florida Tech, Valencia State. They're local schools and say, hey, look, we'd like to do an apprenticeship program. Let's pick your top 6 associates and, we'll have them come and work, X number of months at each one of the sites and kind of get their feet wet, hands-on work experience. I think they would go over great. I've had those conversations actually with some of the folks at Valencia State College, and they would be totally open to that. That's a selling feature for them as far as their degree program or certification program, right? And it's a win-win for you. Then you get the opportunity to expose those qualified people to your company so that when they finish and they come looking, hopefully they come looking to you first, right? To me, that's a no-brainer, and a lot more should be partaken in that on the maintenance side.
I actually have this idea, maybe it's crazy, maybe not, but I'm testing it, that we could do apprenticeship at scale, at a national level. And here's how I believe we could do it. I'm actually very convinced. And I took steps into that direction. I want to share a little more in the near future. So there's entire categories that are underserved by our industry. Let's just say young individuals that, especially those living in neighborhoods where opportunities are very limited, maybe crime is high too.
Yep.
They're trapped. They're just trapped. We have the opportunity to go to them, speak to them, and pull them out of those neighborhoods. We're employing, 6 to 8 week program, and giving them the opportunity to work in multifamily. I actually know of individuals that went through similar programs, not necessarily maintenance, but their statement was, when the very first person, my entire family, was going to make $50,000 a year. We're talking about very high numbers, and you mentioned your son making $100K and being so successful at it at a very young age. For someone, $50,000 is the highest that ever someone has ever made in their family. This is not a unique situation.
No, not at all.
There's millions of people like that. We had to go to them, speak to them, and then showing them that this is an opportunity. Another category, military personnel, that's transitioning back into civilian life. We all know the problems with PTSD, with suicide, and I think a lot of it is actually connected to the fact that the society doesn't do enough to reintegrate them and offer them possibilities to help them, like make that transition smoother. We could be part of that solution as an industry. The third category, women. We have probably like only 2% of our maintenance personnel is women. Why not just go to women?
Right.
Why not just bring more women into the industry?
Couldn't agree more. To me, three of the best supervisors I've ever had in my 33 years have been female supervisors. They look at things differently, right?
They are, because we're different.
Right, exactly. And it's a different set of eyes. And we talk about diversity all the time, right? And to me, the biggest diversity is the thought of a lady versus the thought of a man. And, you go out and you walk properties, most of your RMs, they're females, right? And a lot of your upper level management, female, we're female dominated industry at that level on the management side, but not on the maintenance side. And, when you do owner walks or visits with your RMs and stuff like that, it's like the paint scrape there and it's that's dirty over there. It's not, boy, look at that AC unit. That unit's looking pretty rough, right? So it brings in a different set of eyes. And then once they have the technical aspect, it's a win-win. Now they've got the look for the presentation, right? That curb appeal, because that's a natural. And then they've established a skill set for the technical side. That's a win-win. I mean, it's hard to teach guys that skill set of the eye, right? Because, right, wrong, indifferent,
We have the man look.
That's it.
We have the man look.
That's right. It's like,
it's real. It's
they don't think about that because they don't do that at home. Or, as a single dad growing up and raising my boys on my own for 20-some years, I had to do that, right? So and I think that's part of why I've been successful, because I had the eye appeal and the curb appeal look, just like most of your upper level management. And I had it from the very beginning because I had to do that at my own home, right? So when the windows were streaked, I caught that kind of thing. O-rings in the toilet, I'd catch those when most of maintenance guys are. So I think that's a big avenue that we should explore and we should push on.
Totally. And, just to add more to what you just said, our female counterparts they show higher level of empathy than we do. No reality. So there's more of that needed. Really.
Customer service is far greater.
Absolutely. So we're definitely. So with that being said, with these three categories, I'm committed to start a program that's going to eventually the goal is to become national, way beyond my career. I don't want it to be, it's not about me. It's just about seeing this opportunity and bringing many people to the table, individuals, executives, people that believe in what we do and believe that there's an opportunity out there, and also create opportunity for people. I'm incredibly passionate about that. The categories I just mentioned, being underserved, they really are. Bringing more of those into the industry creates wins for them, and it creates wins for us as an industry again. We should be able to close that gap that, we're facing right now.
Absolutely.
It has to be a concentrated effort. It's not a, Adrian team right here. It's going to take all of us, right? And the right partnerships, the right involvement. I would love to reach out to you and see if you could help in any capacity with our programs.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's coming. We're working on it behind the scenes. We're building it. We're not at the time yet to reveal everything, but probably within the next 3 to 4 months, you'll probably be hearing an announcement.
Okay. That'd be great. You hit the key word. It's not an Adrian thing. It's something that we can serve. And I'm a true believer that that's supposed to be all our goal on this earth, to serve one another, right? And serve society, which, all starts with serving the big man upstairs, right? So I love the fact that you're looking to help service the industry, but also serve the community, because bigger, stronger communities make bigger, stronger companies.
it's a win-win, and it's also when you reach a certain age, right? One of the things that I think about often is legacy, right? Is this something that I could build that will last beyond my physical life, right? That some others could like take it and run with it and make it bigger and better.
Right.
And I think this, this could be it, right? It could be something that, looking back, I could say, I contributed a little bit. I helped. I was a part of this. I started this. That's kind of a goal, personal goal of mine for legacy. But again, it's not like the whole thing is not about me. It's not about, me being egotistic and, wanting to be up on a pedestal. It really isn't. Just, I have this idea. I'm passionate about it. I'm bringing people together. We're going to build amazing things together.
That sounds great.
Confident about that. Centralization. What are your thoughts on centralization in maintenance?
In respect to
Centralizing maintenance services, basically, I should probably start with the definition. Probably the most common definition being that running maintenance services from a central location, right? So certain maintenance functions being run not at the site level, but in a central location, the services serves more than just one site, a number of locations.
So my experiences, because I won't use company names or anything like that. We tried that, right? With different workbooks, Excel spreadsheets, apps, et cetera, et cetera. My only concern is that if it's done centrally, it's kind of like you're relying on the inmates to run this on. Perfect example, fire life safety stuff, right? So you got your annual inspections, all of a sudden they're due. So if you're doing it centrally, you're reaching out, you're saying, hey, where's your reports, where's your spreadsheets, and they send you what they need to send you, but they don't include the deficiency list with it. So you're sitting on $30,000 worth of deficiencies that haven't been approved, they're taken care of, whatever. You're relying heavily on everybody on site being 100% forthright. And that's not my experiences, right? Another big one now in Florida, especially, is tort reform, right? Tort reform that, you got all these different categories you're tracking and things that need to be done in order for you to meet the tort reform requirements to mitigate liability, right? If you do those things, you mitigate a whole ton of liability. If you're not, then, you put yourself at a lot of risk, right? And we have this spreadsheet, this workbook we made up. We'd send out regular, hey, you guys need to update this, and they'd fill it out. And then the next time I go do a site visit, there's no child safety locks on the windows, the sliding glass doors going straight to the pool. There's, the gates are broken, and come to find out they've been broke for 6 months. CCTV cameras aren't working, that kind of stuff. In the perfect world, it'd be great, obviously, because anytime you can centralize, you can minimize expense, a lot of different avenues, labor-wise, production-wise. I still think there's always going to be that amount of boots on the ground that's got to take place, no matter how centralized you are. Just from an aspect of, there's still that human error. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt in some cases, human error, right? It's really more human deception. But with that said, I see challenges. I've not found anything that's, steadfast. I would say that model works. I've seen some good things here and there, but every one of them, even the ones that I say, hey, that's a good idea, we ended up having to apply some checks and balances to it.
So it's very interesting that I've been having these conversations for a number of years, probably 3 years, 2 to 3 years, when the concept became very popular, started to become and get traction. Every time I talk to a facilities leader like you, they're basically saying, in short, I don't think this is going to be a good model. Every time I talk to like a C-suite level executive, they're saying, we find a way to do it better. Like, just wait and see. We got to show how it's done. It's also very interesting, very funny that now I'm seeing currently companies, very large operators, that have tried this for 2-3 years, and they're pulling back out of the programs. they're going back to resetting. I think one situation that they haven't really thought about, and to me it's kind of like very simple the way I see it. Multifamily property in the institutional assets, let's say 200 units or more. It's a business that's already a business at scale. You're servicing a few hundreds families already. You're not like an individual homeowners. They're all in one place. So that's a business that's by design, it's a scale business. Now, that scale business has many challenges, right? Short staff, people untrained, all sorts of problems when it comes to like maintenance services. You're suffering. And then when you're trying to centralize basically what you're doing, you're trying to super scale the business. And when you super scale a model that has so many deficiencies, what you do, you're amplifying the issues that you're having to begin with, because you're not addressing those first. So you're not trying to amplify a successful model. It's a model that actually hurts. It's a model that's like inefficient currently, and you're trying to say, we're going to roll this up and it's going to be better.
Yeah, you want to supersize something that's not working already.
Am I wrong in like thinking?
No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Because there's aspects like mobile facilities apps, Net Vendor, Service Connect, all those types of things where you can track your inspections and work orders, and you have all this data and information available right from the click of a button in an office. That's a bit of centralization, and it's work for the most part. But even in that, something of that nature, it's still only as good as the people putting the information in,
100%.
right? So, let's say it's a work order, and yeah, it's all tracked, it's all monitored. You don't need the hard copies anymore because everything's stored, and we got an issue 6 months down the road, we can go back and reference it. But 6 months from now, you go back and you reference it, and there's no notes, no pictures. It just says completed or whatever. What good is that, right? So even all the centralized stuff, even the AI stuff and the chat, it's only as good as the people that input the information in the systems of all. Like we just went through a process of rolling out a mobile facilities apps, which I won't use names. Phenomenal. I mean, we've had a lot of problems, but I would say if I had to recommend a mobile facilities app, I would recommend this app. But some of the shortcomings, right? Well, we want them to be inspecting all the fire extinguishers, the smoke detectors on every work order, right? Well, let's put a button in there then that won't let them complete the work order until they check that they check the smoke detectors, right? If there's a deficiency of certain keywords, then it should force them to add a picture, right? So sometimes it's a matter of taking what you're doing and improving on it to get where you need to be, as opposed to, centralizing everything in one certain way. The other problem I have with centralization, and this is the biggest problem I have with it, I've experienced this a couple of different places, but especially my last role, where our growth has been so phenomenal, okay? And we're branching out into new markets, and they went into territories that they've not operated in. And they transferred people in from other areas and all that weren't familiar with those areas. A lot of things fall through the cracks, right? Nobody that came here knew about balcony inspections. Nobody came here. Nobody that was here when I came on board knew anything about tort reform. There was a lot of things that fell through the cracks because so many management companies and ownership groups, as they expand, they want to make everything cookie cutter and think it's going to fit in one little box nice and neatly no matter where they are, right? And this goes back to the issue we were talking about with staffing as well, right? One of the biggest things that I find with staffing and when you're having turnover is because you're not meeting the market demands, right? Financially and or, reputation-wise, right? The way you're treating people. If you get a negative stereotype for, underpaying, understaffing your properties in the marketplace, as well as I do, our industry is very, as big as it is, expansive as it is, it's also very small.
Absolutely.
Right?
Incredibly small too.
So, and that's why reputation's everything in my opinion, right? We kind of talked about it before we started the podcast. I've never had to worry about a job. 33 years, I've never had to go ask somebody for a job. I've either been recruited or somebody I used to work for got a new position and they came to me with a new opportunity, right? And it's because of the reputation that I created for myself when I developed, a brand that I built, right? And it's likewise, same thing. As a management company or an ownership group, you got a brand. You got to protect that brand. Okay. And especially if you're a third party, you can't let your clients diminish from your brand, right? Because if you do, then you're going to be known for what that client is, right? If you're a property management company and all you got is B and C properties, it's going to be kind of hard to acquire any A properties because that's not what you're known for in that market, right? Same way. It's hard to recruit people if your brand is they understaff their properties and they underpay, okay? Or they don't treat their people right. So the centralization thing is the same thing, right? When you try to go anywhere in the United States and operate the same way that you've been operating, and I don't care how many years you've been doing it, 10, 12, 13 years, whatever, that doesn't mean it's going to work in said market, right? One of the things, it used to drive me nuts. Every year we had to do this pool opening procedure. Folks, we never close our pools. They don't have to apply for a pool permit here in Florida every year like they do up there. They got to have an inspection, apply for permits up in the northern states, right? And that's because they're closing their pools. So when they reopen them, they got to come out and do an inspection. We don't have to do that, right?
It's 24/7 operations.
That's right. In Florida, every single pool permit expires June 30th. So I don't need a chart to monitor that, right? I don't need to do an inspection. They wanted that done, so we did that, right? Yet they don't do balcony inspections in other states. Other states require King's 3 phones. Florida doesn't require King's 3 phones anymore. You show up on a property and say, oh, where's your King's 3 phone? Or the King's 3 phone's not working. And I said, well, let's just get rid of it. If it's not working, you don't have to have it. So if it's not working, get rid of it. But if it's here, it's got to be working. Right? So, get rid of it.
Yeah.
The thing, centralization is great in scale. I don't think it can be applied across the board, especially if you're operating multiple states, multiple markets.
You mentioned earlier that brand is incredibly important and how you build it, and the fact that in 30 plus years of career, you never really had to look for work because work came your way. So let's talk about the importance of building brand and how have you been building yours to get you to that position where most people are chasing opportunities, you had opportunities coming knocking on your door. So it's kind of like you turn the table on opportunity and it's like coming towards you versus you chasing it.
Right. And I'm going to share my personal experience. Right. So I just recently entered the market again, looking for opportunities. First time in 33 years I've had to actually go looking, right? Or at least I thought I was going to have to go looking. I started the LinkedIn thing. And then all of a sudden, as soon as I made the change on my LinkedIn, the phone calls started coming. Hey, so what happened? I heard you're in the market. And I was like, yep. Long story short, time to move on, find something new, right? So that brand, partly it's just the number of years. I mean, you're in an industry for 33 years, as I have been, whether it's on the construction side, the development side, or, the day-to-day multifamily operations. You meet a lot of people, right? So I always say, be careful. You never know who you're going to sit down across from someday, right? So I've always tried to treat everybody with the utmost respect. Okay. I think that's been reciprocated for the most part, right? And I've always been honest, almost to a fault sometimes, right? But I won't lie for myself. I'm not going to lie for somebody else or be deceitful for somebody else. So I've always been very honest, very forthright. But most importantly is my work ethic. I mean, I had a great teacher. My father was a phenomenal man. Okay. Like I had mentioned earlier, he went from manufacturing at IBM in a 29-year career, from a guy that walked in off the street when IBM got started up on an assembly line at $75 an hour, a week, all the way up to Back in 1989 when he left the IBM, over $100,000 a year, 89. That was
So it was a lot of money.
Not to mention all their benefits. I mean, his benefits like worth another $100,000 a year. But anyway, and then retired from him. And then second career came along. He'd always been a woodworker, always loved doing woodworking as a hobby. And, he was dabbling as a hobby doing custom furniture and stuff like this. And some guy he was at one of these art shows or something where he was selling stuff. He said, man, you got a real touch and an eye for this stuff. And he's like, yeah, I've been doing it since I was a kid, wood shop at school, right? And that turned into going to work as a service manager for Regal Kitchens out of Miami for years. Going to all their projects, doing all their takeoffs, all their measurements, all that, overseeing the work, doing the punch list, whatever. Another 15 years. The guy didn't have to be working, right? But
that's an incredible story.
My father's 82 this year, 81 this year, turns 81 this year. And I went home to visit him at our house, and the guy's built a whole bee yard with like 10 hives out there. He's got a chicken coop. He's got a full-grown garden going on, and he's out tinkering, still doing his woodworking. Matter of fact, my niece's school needs some cabinets to store their violins and stuff in for after school. He's building this great big huge cart system on wheels at 81 years of age, right? And he has always been a worker, a hard worker. And I said, if nothing else, if I could just take that from my father, I'm going to be very successful in life. And trust me, I didn't always think that way. I don't know what it is with fathers and sons banging heads. But we banged heads for a few years, right? As my youngest son and I did, right? But there's nobody that I respect more than my father to this day now, right? So the work ethic, that honesty, because I think that ties into the loyalty. I can't stress enough the loyalty. Even places where I didn't feel it was reciprocated, I always gave my 100% loyalty to the company. Always. If I had something negative to say, it was behind closed doors. I would never do it to another client. I would never do it to a customer. Always up those conversations. You never talk those conversations down to the subordinates and stuff, because no company's perfect, right?
We're not perfect.
That's right.
Let's remember that.
So, in my loyalty has always been to wherever I'm at, whether I've felt appreciated or not. And then with that, I reciprocate. At the same time, I'm honest and to fault sometimes. Because if I think you're doing something wrong, I'm going to tell you you're doing something wrong. Because I've seen a lot of companies come and go in this industry, right? Or they get gobbled up by somebody else. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. I see this happen, I see that happening, and, they wonder why they're having issues, right? So to me, if you're not willing to listen to your associates, especially your senior level management to corporate level, right? And then your senior level management's got to listen to the boots on the ground. I can't tell you how many times I overhear conversations, about occupancy and why is occupancy this, why is occupancy, we got to get occupancy up. And nobody really steps back and says, are we listening to our boots on the ground? Because I'm sitting here hearing the managers, well, I'm doing my market survey. We're $300 over everybody else in our market that's our competition for this floor plan. And we're sitting on 12 of them, but there's no backing them up and saying, oh, we're going to drop. Let's get that rent down. Okay. Or, pool's been closed for 4 months, so you can resurface the pool, redo the pool. And we waited till March and April to start it, knowing it's going to be a 3-month. And then, so we've got a mass exodus because our pool's been closed all summer. Okay. Nobody wants to hear those conversations, and nobody shares those conversations, because all too often as senior leadership, we find excuses for the problems as opposed to listen to the people that are living it day to day, whether it's the site to the regional staff, or the regional staff to the corporate staff, right? We all know every company has got those, I use the word above my pay grade kind of conversation. I know some people don't like that, but the reality is it's a reality. You know, there's some things that, yeah, I can see it, I can mention it, I can notice it, but I can't do anything to change it. So you elevate that to the next pay grade, right? And if that doesn't get to the people that it needs to get to, how's anything going to change? Right? So I've always been loyal to a fall. I've always put 100% in, and the people that I work with day to day see that, they know that. So regardless of what the circumstances is, I've been blessed with the fact that if I've ever had to move on from someplace, you know, there was usually somebody right there ready to give me an opportunity. And that's all I ever ask for. Give me the opportunity, and I will show you the promised land. I promise you. And I say that to the guys. I say, develop those relationships and work habits. That way, as opportunities come, because the other thing you and I talked about earlier was the constant turnover, right? And I'm not talking about staff. I'm talking about properties. The real money in this industry is made in the buying and selling of properties, not managing long term. No matter who it is, what you do, what your role is, always do it to the best of your ability. Have the right work ethic, right work attitude, be respectful. And it's more about, is this a person pleasurable to work with? Now, I will tell you, early in my career, I was a bit of a bear. One of the questions I saw that you had was, tell me about somebody that you've hired that you've promoted through or has been with you for a long time. How did it come about, et cetera, et cetera. I have a gentleman that I've known for probably 25 years now, and hired him as a technician when I was with Avalon Park Group. And this guy just a great guy. I mean, he was going through a divorce, so he had some issues going on in his life. It kind of impeded his work, but I always could tell beneath it all, this was 100% genuinely good guy. He would do anything he could for you, right? And same with the residents, right? What better attitude, right? He was such a pleasure to work with, et cetera, et cetera. So I worked with him 5 or 7 years before I moved on from that company, went elsewhere. And then shortly after I left, he went to work for Dell Air Conditioning and was just a phenomenal HVAC tech, right? So my last position, they're like, hey, you can get a support guy. Immediately, I thought Eddie. I'm like, ooh, what better candidate? 90% of what we do is air conditioning. That's all he's done for 7 years, every day, all day long. So he'll see things, or he has seen things in his field that we'll probably never encounter on our properties. Or he's done it so many times, it's like reading a book, where for us, we might see it once every 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So brought him on board. And it's, absolutely incredible run with him. Everything that was Eddie is still Eddie, plus more, because he's grown more, right? And it wasn't necessarily his skill set that made me think of him first. I had other guys just as skilled as him, but his skill set, his personality, his demeanor, again, a guy that I knew was 100% loyal to the company, almost to a fault sometimes as well, right? Just would do anything for everybody, which also was almost to a fault sometimes because he would overpromise himself, right? But he always found a way to pull it off. What better a candidate, right? So that's what I'm selling to all the techs out there. Anybody that's in our industry, build your brand. Make your personality, your skill set, your work ethic, and your attitude the number one attribute that you can pass on to any property you go to, right? The skill sets are great, and knowledge is power. So the more that you can add, the farther and faster you will advance. But the doors and the opportunities get open because of the other things I just mentioned. Personality, attitude, work ethic.
Well, I want to wrap up this conversation with something that I'm deeply won't say passionate about, I think about a lot lately. I think it comes with age, it's age here. When it's all said and done for you, what would you like your legacy to look like? If you were to be Duane 100 years from now, how would you like to see Duane at the end of his career when it's all said and done? Or like looking in perspective throughout the entire length of his career?
Yeah. I would like to think that everybody that I've come encountered with on a professional level and worked with would share the respect for who I am. You know, when you encounter as many people as we do, there's always, and you got personalities, there's always, banging heads. But at the end of the day, what I hope my legacy is that the people that you run into, if you ever came across or introduced my name in a conversation and they had ever worked with me, they said, oh yeah, that guy, he was great to work for or work with. Hard worker, honest, do anything for you. I tell some guys, why are you always so hard on me? And I was like, I'm hard on you because I know you're capable of more. It's a love for you. It's a passion for you. Don't ever take that for anything else, right? When you need to worry with me is when I stop having the conversation with you. Because at that point, I've given up on you. I'm always pushing, and I'm firm about it. So, at the end of the day, I just hope that my legacy is that people will respect who I was, and understand that it was all out of passion for them, passion for the job, and that at the end of the day, I hope that there's several guys out there that have worked for me that have exceeded what I want, and I was part of that, right? Advanced farther than where I've been blessed to be able to advance to, and I'm part of that. I was part of getting them there. All the knowledge in the world is great while we're alive, but if we take it to the grave with us without sharing it, what good was it, right? So my legacy is I want to share as much of what I have inside my skull and my heart with as many people as I can between now and the end.
Duane, thank you for this amazing opportunity to talk to you, to get to meet you in person for the first time.
Yeah, pleasure, and I'm glad you reached out.